Order the Finance Committee meeting of Monday, September 27th, 2021. And I'll ask Dave to call the roll.
Alder Carter.
Present.
Alder Verveer.
Here.
Alder Furman.
Present.
Alder Figueroa Cole.
Here.
Alder Curry.
Here.
Mayor, you have quorum.
Thank you. So without objection, our registrant for item 21 would like to shift her registration to the general public comment. So we'll take comment from Alexander Wilburn of District 4.
I do not see an Alexander Wilburn on with us tonight.
All right, we will try again later on then. Are there any disclosures or recusals on today's agenda? Seeing none. Then we'll move on to the consent agenda. At this point, we have registrants wishing to speak on items 16, 18, 19, and 21. Are there other items that alders would like to have excluded from the consent agenda? Alder Verveer?
Thank you, Mayor. Please exclude agenda item number 8.
Number 8 will do. Any other items that alders wish to have excluded from the consent agenda? All right, seeing none, then we will exclude items 8, 16, 18, 19, our closed session item 20. Actually, unless there's a request, we can leave that on the consent agenda. Alder Furman?
Yeah, I would like that not to be on the consent agenda. I want there to be discussion about that, please.
Okay, so items 8, 16, 18, 19, 20, and 21 will be excluded from the consent agenda. Anything additional? Seeing none. Alder Furman, you didn't have anything additional, did you? No, okay. Seeing none, then Alder Carter, a motion on the consent agenda?
I move the consent agenda.
Alder Verveer, would you second?
Second.
Consent agenda is moved and seconded. Any questions or discussion? Seeing none, is there any objection to recording a unanimous vote in favor of the consent agenda? Seeing no objection, we'll record a unanimous vote in favor of the consent agenda, and we will move to item 8, which is Legistar 67459, authorizing the water utility general manager to file a rate case with the PSC. And so, President Abbas, a motion on number 8.
Motion to adopt.
Alder Carter.
Second to adopt.
It moved and seconded to adopt number 8. Alder Verveer?
Thank you, Mayor. I do have questions of water utility staff. I don't see Krishna in my list of attendees, but I do see Kathy.
Yeah, he was unable to attend, so I will do my best to answer your questions.
Okay, thanks, Kathy. Well, I'll start with the easy process one. In I think it was a 5-page memo to the water board for their meeting tomorrow. It states that the schedule for consideration of this rate case actually is not today's finance committee meeting, but the October 11th city
Yeah,
finance committee meeting. Is there a reason why we need to consider this prior to having the water board's recommendation tonight?
That was just my misunderstanding in how the Legistar works. And so when they put it in, since the finance committee is secondary and water board is primary, I was informed that the secondary committee actually should take it up first. And so that's why it's coming here tonight instead of on the 11th.
Okay, I see. I'll just say that I, for one, think the water board has more expertise on these matters than we do here at this committee, and I prefer to have their expertise educate us before we take action. But anyway, with that said, could you, I don't know if all of us had a chance to review the memo, could you just give us an overview of the pretty significant changes that the utility is considering in this rate case? It's on a couple of levels. It's a departure from all the previous rate cases that I'm familiar with.
Sure. So in 2019, we had submitted the financial plan with the PSC. And then in our 2020 rate case, part of the rate order was that we would go for rate cases every 2 years. And the next one was due July of 2021. We did write and get an extension to December 1st of 2021. And so this is the rate case that was required for us to file. And part of what we are trying to do with this rate case is to a double-pronged approach to, one, stop the increase in bond debt financing for our projects. And then at the same point, when we do that, we realize that it's going to increase the cost of water for the customers. And so we wanted to introduce a affordability component to be able to help the lower income and fixed income customers to be able to afford this increase. And so working with Trilogy, the consultant who has been a part of, so the PSC has approved 3 expense depreciation rate cases in the past, and Trilogy has been a consultant on 2 of the 3. And they have not approved any affordability component on any rate cases. So this will be a first for them to start to tackle the affordability component of it.
Thank you for the overview. Just starting with the proposed means testing customer assistance program, which I think is obviously very exciting. Do I understand correctly that we would obviously be the first water utility in the state to have such a program?
Correct, in the state of Wisconsin, yes.
And has any other utility proposed anything close to this to the PSC in the past, do you know? Or is this new territory for the PSC?
Not that I'm aware of. I believe this would be the first, and definitely new territory.
We should say, though, Alder, that this will not come out of the blue for the PSC. It's been a topic of conversation.
Yes, they're aware. We had a meeting with them prior to this and let them know that we plan on including expense depreciation and the affordability component.
Yeah, thank you. Actually, the mayor anticipated one of my questions I plan to ask Kathy, and that is what has the staff level at the PSC conversations been like, and have they been helpful and optimistic that at the staff level, the staff would likely recommend so-called option 3 that you and Trilogy are recommending to the 3 commissioners at the PSC?
Well, they're always quite guarded with the conversations. There's a lot of rules about what they can and can't say to us ahead of time. And so from what I can take from the conversations that we've had, they're very open to it. They need to see how it'll play out, how the numbers will work, because they're very concerned with treating all customers the same and making sure that you've thought this out into the future and that there's intergenerational considerations of how you're laying out your rates, and that one rate class is not having to take the brunt of another one. So once we put it all together and put the rate case in there, I think that they'll see that we've considered all these options. There is also a UW professor he might be a visiting professor, Manny I'm sorry, I can't remember his last name, who is quite informed on water utility affordability. And he is now at the UW-Madison. And I know that Krishna has had, yes, thank you, Steph, Manny Tedora. And he has had a few meetings with Krishna to talk about water affordability. And he was a name that the PSC brought up to us to talk about, to meet with and talk about affordability. So we have done that.
Thank you. When I think of folks that are on fixed incomes that would suffer because of the increase in municipal services billing, I take the leap and make the assumption that the vast majority of those pay their municipal services via their rent, that they're renters, and our billings go to their landlord. Do I understand the program correctly that this would not, at this, or I realize it's a very early stage and it would take quite an implementation, but that those folks would not directly benefit at this time? These would be more for folks that receive the municipal services bill monthly directly to their residences?
Correct. This will be based on who the bill is who the customer is. So if it's baked into your rent number, then no, it's not going to offer any assistance to that customer.
In the research that you and perhaps Trilogy have done, are there examples around the country of customer assistance programs where we are able to assist those that aren't directly billed but are paying indirectly through their rent?
And I do know, so I'm working with the Mayor's Initiative project on the affordability also, and I do know that that's a pretty hot topic right now to try. How do you parse out? Because you can't, if you're going to do it based on the income, you can't include the income of the owner. You're talking just the income of the renter. And if the renter isn't the person in the name, how does that help them if the rent keeps going up? So I don't know of anyone who has found a way to actually work that into there yet, but I do know that it is a topic that is being discussed.
Thank you. And then referring back to the memo again, in the estimates that are given as to how many Madison residents would likely take advantage of this. And again, we obviously have to make the decision on what AMI would be used. Was that, can you just explain how we came up with the estimated number of households that might benefit, in determining how many are, again, receiving our municipal services bill directly versus not?
I believe that Krishna got those numbers using the HUD AMI numbers, and then looking at the estimates for the city of Madison on how many households fell into each of those categories. Because currently we do not, at the water utility, we do not receive any income-based information for our customers. And so he was using that, I believe.
I see. And then perhaps lastly, and I appreciate you being responsive to all these questions. Lastly, can you remind us how long the average rate case is typically pending before the commission? So in other words, when do you think, we'll obviously file this prior to December 1st, and perhaps quite early if this is going to the council meeting in a few weeks, would likely be 6 months, a year? How soon? I know some of our rate cases seem to take longer than others.
Since we are including expense depreciation and an affordability component, it will be what's called a contested case, and that means it has to go in front of the commission. And so typically a contested case, in our experience, has taken about 1 year. So we're expecting this to be approved and the new rates in effect a year after after the rate application is accepted.
So your estimate is that these effective new rates and the potential for the CAP would likely be the first of 2023?
Correct.
Very good. Well, thank you, Kathy. I'll just say in closing here that I appreciate the utility taking a serious look not only at both our extensive debt load, but also again at the impact of our rates on our customers. And obviously, if this is approved by the PSC, it would be great if we can have that conversation sooner rather than later with all of the utilities that are that make up our municipal services billing.
Yeah.
So, thanks.
Well, thank you. I know
No,
it's.
sorry, go ahead, Kathy. Sorry.
I was just going to say thank you. It's near and dear to our hearts to make water affordable to everybody, and knowing how expensive it is in infrastructure, trying to find ways to do that. So
Thanks again. Good luck with the rate case. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Alder. Alder Carter, questions?
Yeah, Kathy, can you tell me when will this be submitted? I missed the date.
it officially has to be submitted by December 1st of this year, but hopefully we'll submit it shortly before that.
Okay. And then, I commend you also. I used to sit on the water utility board for pursuing the affordability aspect of water. But I have to ask you, is there any future plans on having a, what do I want to say, a package, an invoice package where the person can pay the same amount every month? Like MG&E has a rate where it's spread out and you can pay whatever it is, I don't know, $200 a month, and it's spread out to make it more affordable for the individual. Is the water utility thinking about something like that?
We have not included that in our future plans, but that certainly is something. We haven't had too many customers request that. But I do know what you're talking about, the whole budget billing at like MTN.
Yeah, that's what it's called. Thank you. And then also a lot of, this is welcome news, especially for our senior population, which is on a fixed income.
Mm-hmm.
So this is welcome news for that. Those are all my questions, and I'll have my fingers crossed for us.
Thank you.
Thank you, Alder, and thank you, Kathy. Are there any other questions for the water utility? Seeing none, is there any discussion? The motion is to adopt. Is there any objection to recording a unanimous vote in favor? Seeing no objection, we'll record a unanimous vote in favor. And we'll move on to item 16, which is Legistar 67390, authorizing the award of American Rescue Plan Act funding to the Madison Public Market Foundation. And item 16, we have one registrant, Bob Schaefer from District 17, wishing to speak.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Yes, the building a public market at the First Street location has been an objective for years. The concept of having a location to house opportunities for a variety of sellers to market their products in a climatized year-round environment is a great concept. Currently, the location successfully serves as a homeless men's shelter, in part due to its easy access and proximity to needed services. Now, why is it a bad location for a public market? Madison has had a long history with caring for our homeless community. Many of the services and access to food were available downtown and along State Street. Over time, State Street became less desirable as a place to shop due to being approached by panhandlers and exposure to other unpleasant services. What measures will be taken to prevent the public market built at the First Street location from experiencing similar situations? Its proximity to downtown, controlled climate, hours of operation, resources to food, and opportunities for panhandling are likely to attract homeless people. If that should happen, how will it affect the continued success or attract vendors and people from outlying communities? The risk of building this in the proposed location seems to have more negatives than positives. Please consider the long-term investment. Another location out near the interstate or the American Center may be a more successful long-term location. And that's it.
Thank you. Are there questions for our registrant? Right, seeing none, President Abbas, a motion on item 16?
Move motion to authorize $400,000.
Second to authorize.
Moved and seconded to adopt. Are there any questions for staff? Is there any discussion? Seeing none, it's been moved and seconded. Is there any objection to recording unanimous vote in favor? Seeing no objection, we'll record a unanimous vote in favor of item 16 and move on to item 18, which is Legistar 67405, authorizing a purchase and sale agreement for the property at 1902 Bartillon Drive. On item 18, we have two registrants wishing to speak. Bob Schaefer of District 17, to be followed by Dave Gary.
Okay, I saw that. Sorry, it took me a while. Putting a shelter out at the 1902 Bartillon Drive is disrespectful of the needs and services required by homeless men. It's like sticking them away somewhere out of the way. The other negatives to this location are proximity to the Madison College, where potential for panhandling and inappropriate behavior to the students could occur. The other proximity is the Rindle Park fields, which have had various concerns lately. This location does not give easy access to the services homeless men need. It is like sticking them in a closet. If the objective is moving the homeless out of central Madison, then do it right by building a structure that can permanently house them and help them regain home status. We have an obligation to help our homeless who want help. Those who don't want help but choose to be homeless have made their choice, and all efforts to help are wasted. That's it.
All right, our next registrant is Dave Gary of District 17.
Hello, Madam Mayor. I'm the owner of the Princeton Clubs, both on the east and the west side of Madison. I'm not a politician. I know you have a difficult job, all of you alders do. The idea of putting this men's homeless shelter out by Easttown is the wrong zoning. The alder in the district is opposed to it. The alder in the adjacent district is opposed to it. So I'm curious, why are we thinking about trying to jam through this in that site? Now, I've been wasting my time and energy as opposed to running my business, trying to send you real-time footage of what's going on out by Easttown. And it's absurd. And no one on the council can ever look at me and say, I don't care about the homeless or feeding the hungry. I've donated over $700,000 to the food pantry in Madison, personally, not corporately, personally. And so I do care about people, but I also care about business. I care about the 20,000 members I have. And we are beginning literally to lose business. Our business keeps going down and down. Our retail tenants are getting fed up. They want to move and relocate. So when you make a decision like this, it's a much bigger picture than just trying to help a couple guys out to have a warm place to sleep. It starts to destroy business, and it becomes kind of a cancer in the area. And it begins to get us in a situation where people like me want to go in and have our assessment redone, have it lowered dramatically because it's destroying the property values. I'm adamantly opposed to it, to the point where I would be willing to start spending my money on radio and television to tell people in the city of Madison how opposed the business owners in the district of Easttown are to this idea. Thank you for taking a minute to listen to me, a local boy that grew up here, that's run a business for 35 years right next to Easttown. That's all.
Are there questions for either of our registrants? Seeing none, President Abbas, on item 18, a motion, please.
Motion to adopt.
Alder Carter,
Second to adopt.
moved and seconded to adopt. Are there questions for staff? Or is there discussion? The President Abbas,
Thank you. I have a question for the staff, please.
go ahead.
Question is for Jim O'Keefe. Jim, in the resolution, at this particular site at Bartellon is mentioned for homelessness, but there was not clear direction given either it's going to use for permanent men's shelter or encampment, tiny homes. Would you please clarify what is the intent, future intent of this particular site?
Alder Abbas, the site we believe has the potential for a number of different uses. I know that is I know that that's ambiguous, and what we decide, what the council ultimately decides with respect to this property is going to hinge on the larger decision about a location for a men's shelter. So there are different paths that this property might take depending on other decisions that you all will make and will make relatively soon. And you're not in a position to make those decisions just yet. We're not in a position to put forward specific recommendations just yet because we are assembling the last bit of information that we need to evaluate all of the different sites we're considering and put those decisions forward to you. And once that decision gets made, then decisions about other properties, including this one, I think will become more clear.
Thank you, Jim, and thanks for your work. Can I have a question for Attorney Hess?
Go ahead, Alder.
Thank you. Attorney Hess, my question is about legal process of this legislative proposal in front of us. So during Finance Committee, we have a closed session. In my understanding, or at least that was the understanding was given to the council, was we are looking into a closed session, these sites, and we will bring those back again as a permanent men's shelter site. And there was a different options were shown, different criteria. And this particular resolution to purchase, I'm just curious from legal standpoint, it's not really a framework which council created, or at least my understanding is the framework was the permanent location will come along with other options. So from your point of view, especially this was discussed, one of these sites, two sites, Bartellon and as well as Zaire was discussed in closed session, what the legal standing is for this particular resolution.
Well, I don't think there's a problem with the council adopting this resolution. Is that what you're asking?
Yes, because that happened in a closed session. That site was being discussed. Bartellon site was discussed in a closed session, among other sites.
Right. Right. But I don't think that, that discussion precludes the council from going ahead with this resolution.
Okay. So what you're saying is this, that's in order. We could still move forward.
Yes. Yes.
Okay, fine. Thank you for that. And my last question, Jim, for you is just very brief question. once we purchase this particular site, with looking at the Zaire Road situation, because that's the resolution is going to come forward next, what does the timeline look like for temporarily homeless shelter? And I mean, there are several things happening in the medicine, including encampment and permanent men's shelter. Especially, I'm very curious to hear from you. We were so close to bring, my understanding again, in a finance committee, the staff expressed that they're very close to get permanent shelter in front of the council. I'm curious, what does timeline look like for permanent as well as for Zaire Road, and as well as this particular location of Bartillon Drive, how that location play between this, like a triangle, how that location also play. I hope did you understand what I'm saying?
Well, let me take a stab at it and
Sure.
and see if I can be responsive. In terms of timeline, Dan Rolfs is on the call from real estate, or on the meeting from real estate, so can add further clarity. But it will be late in the year before, if the council approves this resolution, it would be late in the year before the city would likely close on the acquisition of this property. The Zaire Road acquisition could happen a little bit more quickly, but probably not a lot. But I think the more important consideration with respect to the temporary shelter is the timing of progress on the public market. And we are anticipating currently that work on the public market would begin in October, probably, or the fall of next year. And so to leave the first street where we are currently operating a temporary men's shelter in time to avoid disrupting the public market schedule, we would likely want to be out of there by the end of the summer or the first part of the fall of 2022. So we would have until then to prepare the Zaire Road site. So that's the beginning point of the use of that facility as a temporary shelter. The end point will depend upon the process to select a location for a permanent shelter, and then to do the work to design that facility and construct it. I think we have been pointing to the 2 to 3 year period as the likely amount of time it would require to set up and prepare for operating a permanent men's shelter.
So with the timeline, my follow-up question is Bartillon Drive site. If we, just as an assumption, if we create that site as a permanent shelter, how long it will take? And if we move temporary shelter there, how long that site will take to be ready as a temporary shelter?
How long would it take to develop a temporary shelter at the Bartillon site?
Yep.
Well, Alder Abbas, unlike Zaire Road, which has an existing structure that could be relatively easily renovated for use as a temporary shelter, there is not such a structure on the Bartillon property. The structure that is there is all but destroyed. It's been open to the elements for a period of time. It wouldn't be sufficient in size, even if it was intact. So at Bartillon, it would be a matter of clearing that site and then constructing a structure for use as a temporary site. It's hard for me to imagine that we would build a temporary shelter at Bartillon if, as you're suggesting, if we were going to use it as a permanent location.
No, I was curious. I was curious about both options because I haven't seen that site myself. So I'm curious what is the situation of the site. So you already explained temporarily. I appreciate that. With permanent, what will be the timeline if we decide to move that site as a permanent location? How long that take us to create that?
Well, again, all of those same elements would apply. We would need to we'd need to bring somebody on board to design the facility. Then we'd need to identify a construction contractor. The best estimates, I think that Brian Cooper from City Engineering is also here and might be able to shed a little bit more light. But we have been considering this to be a 2 to 3 year proposition from beginning to end, from beginning to open.
All right, I appreciate that. Thanks.
Alder Verveer, questions for staff?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Jim, I had the same line of questioning that President Abbas had. So certainly my main questions have been asked and answered. To try to drill down perhaps a little more specifically, did you confirm to President Abbas that indeed the city staff team is considering the Bartillon Drive location for potential encampment, permanent purpose-built men's shelter, or tiny homes? Did you confirm all three of those are still in the mix?
Alder Abbas had suggested the possibility of the Bartillon property being used as a permanent shelter. So I was just responding to that hypothetical.
Right. So obviously the resolution says short and long-term uses to address homelessness in our community. Can you then maybe just from the beginning share with us what the potential uses are, short-term and long-term again? I don't want to put words in your mouth.
So Alder Verveer, we've been very careful for all these months in discussing potential sites and their uses in a public setting as we finish the process of evaluating different options. We did provide information to the Finance Committee and to a number of members of the council who attended it a while back about the different options that were being considered. And so I would rather not at this point get into that conversation about specific sites and specific uses until we're in a position to put a specific recommendation before the mayor and the council. But I can tell you that the property, because of its location, the Bartillon property, because of its location, because of its size, because of its proximity to public transit, including rapid transit, as that emerges as a city service, it's an attractive site for any number of different uses. And so we're aware of that, and we believe that property has value, short and long term, in a number of different ways. And I'd kind of like to maybe to end my response at that point. Is that responsive to your question?
I appreciate that, Jim, very much. I guess what I was wondering is, would you be comfortable confirming or denying that series of options is still very much in the mix? Obviously, we discussed this in closed session at this committee back in mid-August, so it's been several weeks since. Let me ask you this. Obviously, this resolution is scheduled next to go to the City-County Homeless Issues Committee for a recommendation, and then back to the council. Do you believe that the internal timeline that you're working under will be able to yield more of a direction for us policymakers by the time this resolution returns back to the council later in October? Do you think we're weeks away from narrowing down the potential uses for Bartillon Drive in this, $900,000 or so purchase that we're discussing now? Or is it months away?
So Alder Verveer, I'm not directly involved in the search for those properties. That's something that's an effort Dan Rolfs is leading. I do know that there is just a single piece of information that we were waiting for, and we expect to have that in a matter of weeks, if not days. And I think that will put us in a much better position to be able to evaluate all of the different options that are currently being considered, being vetted. And I think it's certainly conceivable that by the time this resolution comes back to the council for final action, that we would have more information. I see that Matt Wachter has turned his video on, and I'd be more than happy to let Matt or Dan expound on that answer.
Thank you, Jim. And
Jim is doing a wonderful
job. Thank you, Matt and Dan, for weighing in.
Just to echo Jim, the other sites that we are contemplating are more complicated, and due diligence is just taking longer on those. And as Jim said, the hope is that in a matter of days, we'll start to answer some of the unanswered questions. But some of the things we just don't control. So we're working as fast as we can to answer those questions. And hopefully we'll, in a matter of weeks, be able to narrow the field and have more direction.
I appreciate that. Thank you. Thank you all. Thanks, Jim and Matt. And thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Alder. Alder Halverson, questions for staff?
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. Is with the property that's destroyed on Bartillon, what's the cost? Do we know what the cost is for the demo of that existing building?
I believe that if I can volunteer Brian Cooper, I believe that Brian would be able to give us some guidance on that.
Are you talking about the former restaurant that's on the site, Alder?
Yeah, presuming that we're going to want to clear the space to make room for the ambiguous purpose of this, we would need to level that property, correct?
Yes, yeah, for a permanent facility, yes. So I think we had, I would have to look it up to get the specifics, but I think we're somewhere in the $100,000 to $200,000 range for demolition of the building itself. The existing building.
And that gets us to a place where we can do something else with that property? That 100, 200,000?
Well, that would be to demolish that facility. I mean, there would be a lot of other things we would have to do to prepare the site for a permanent facility.
Which would be additional cost on that?
Correct, yes.
Do we know what those additional costs would be?
We have an estimate that we've put together.
Well, Alder, the additional costs depend on what the final use is.
Which we are ambiguous on at this point. We should know what we're discussing for when we're spending this kind of money. An estimate would be helpful in that.
And Alder, you're sensing reluctance from staff because we haven't made a decision on how to use the property. We're moving quickly to secure a property that is likely to be useful to us in both the short and long term so that we don't have somebody else buy it out from under us like has happened in the past. So there's two decisions that need to be made here. One is the decision to acquire property that may be useful to us, which is a strategy the city takes on a number of different things, including for homeless services, but not limited to. And then the second decision is how to use the properties available to us for homeless services. And in this case, for better or for worse, those two decision points are separated in time because we don't have all of the information we need to make the second decision. And yes, for any property, staff could try and cost out what it might mean to turn it into a shelter camp, what it might mean to turn it into a temporary or permanent shelter, or what it might mean to turn it into a tiny house village or into affordable housing. We could cost out all of those things. But until we know how we want to use the property, we're not able to get an exact cost on its future use.
Okay, and then this resolution has just the acquisition costs and the $40,000 environmental studies. So that additional cost has not been factored in anywhere at this time because we have unknowns. Is that correct?
That's correct.
But we know it's at least going to be 100 to 200,000 plus.
Do you have additional questions, Alder?
Yes, I have another question. Is there any concerns about the Wisconsin Department of Transportation Highway 51 Stoughton Road project that's coming down the pike with regards to this property where there might be expanding Highway 51 in that exact area?
Alder, I'm not sure who that's a question for.
Well, would be for somebody on staff that would be looking into this property as an ideal future use property. And if we're looking at it for a variety of reasons, the impact of a widening of the highway might be come into play. I was wanting to know if anybody considered that. It's coming down the pike from the Department of Transportation. Has that not been considered in part of this decision?
Tom, do you want to take a stab at that? I think the city's pretty well opposed to an expansion of 51.
Yeah, so the DOT has done a study of Stoughton Road. They came up with 3 different alternatives that basically range from a city street to a freeway. The study got postponed or put on hold. We've heard that they might want to resurrect it. However, there is no funding right now statewide for any type of investment like that. They have not started an environmental document. I've been involved in numerous WISDOT projects, and the soonest I could see anything happening on Stoughton Road would be 12 to 15 years. So that's a time frame. And that's assuming that if they chose the freeway alternative for this particular section of Highway 51.
Thank you, Mayor. That's all my questions.
Thank you. Alder Carter, questions for staff?
Yeah, Jim, let's go back a little bit. I believe you said that the current temporary shelter would be there until possibly September or October 2022. And at that time, we would have, and correct me at any point because these are all questions, at that time, we would have a temporary shelter available to the organization upon reaching that deadline. Is that correct?
Yes, Alder Carter, that is the current schedule.
Okay. And then how long will that become a temporary shelter before the permanent shelter is available?
We would anticipate that we would remain at the next temporary shelter, likely the Zaire Road location, until the permanent shelter is ready to open. And again,
Okay.
the time from the start of designing that facility to its open has been estimated to be somewhere in the 2 to 3 year range.
Okay, thank you. And then going back to going back to the public market. So are they ready for design and construction by next year? Is that what you said?
It's my understanding of the schedule. I don't know if Matt Mikolajewski is with us, but I believe that's the schedule, yes. That they're prepared to begin, well, Matt's here.
Yes, Alder. The plan right now is the public market is effectively designed, and the plan right now is to basically bid the project early to mid next year and start construction in the fall.
And did I understand correctly, either Jim, the mayor, or whoever, that the Stoughton Road site could be used for a variety of purposes other than a temporary shelter? After we acquire it, we can use it for a variety.
That's correct, Alder Carter.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Alder. Are there other questions for staff? All right, seeing no further questions for staff, it has been moved and seconded to adopt. Is there discussion? Seeing no discussion, is there any objection to recording unanimous vote in favor of adoption? Seeing no objection, we'll record a unanimous vote in favor of item 18. That will take us to item 19, which is Legistar 67422, authorizing the purchase and sale agreement regarding 2002 Zion Road. We have one registrant wishing to speak, Bob Schaefer from District 17.
Yes, thank you again. I've been a resident of Madison since 1972. And that, I guess, quite frankly, I am disappointed in bouncing this around back and forth. It's already been voted down, and that the general perception in the Ridgewood neighborhood, which consists of just about every variety of ethnic background that is in Madison, that concern has been expressed about this, not only from the lack of services that are being provided. We're just shoving people out of the way so that we can build a public market without consideration of what their needs are and what their life will be like in that situation. So in my opinion, it is disrespectful to keep shoving them around, and that the First Street location is the one that has been serving them the best. And instead, we want to put in a public market there only because of the funding that is available for it, without the any absolute or information that it will be successful. And from the things that I've experienced in Madison, and as I pointed out earlier, that all of the indicators basically involving homeless and other areas, which are people that need to be served, that this is going to not be a successful operation. I think you're going to have a problem getting vendors in there. I think that you're going to have a problem getting the public to come down there, and that it just doesn't seem to make sense to me or to the people that I've talked to in our neighborhood. So you can go and shove it down our throats, because we don't have that power. And I think that our alder, Gary, has made the case for us. And I think that the Princeton Club has made a case for it, for not doing that in this location. And I think that it is disrespectful to the community, to the people in the Ridgewood neighborhood, and to the homeless people to keep shoving them around into places that really don't meet their needs and don't provide them with the services that they need. I am disappointed in the council and the mayor in pushing this forward against all opposition. And yes, I realize that we are only one neighborhood association, but that, and it's not a thing of, not in my backyard. If you are going to build a facility there that housed permanently the people on a day-by-day basis, instead of just a nighttime thing where they actually got the services that they need, they were helped to become home, and there was some positive result to it, then it would be a whole different situation. But we're talking about just bringing people in for the night, turning them out during the day, and who knows what or cares about what happens to them after that. That is disrespectful. Thank you.
Are there questions for our registrant? All right, seeing none, then President Abbas, a motion on 19?
Move motion to adopt.
Alder Carter?
Second to adopt.
Moved and seconded to adopt item 19. Are there questions for staff? Is there discussion? Alder Halverson.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just want to point out to the Finance Committee that this was voted on earlier this year, that we did reject this site as a council, that this location, there was a lot of discussion. We can go back and review the numerous hours of discussions from even before the election about this location being the wrong location for many, many reasons. Services don't exist. It's in a parking lot. It's impacting the local businesses, the development. The depressed area of Easttown can't absorb this type of facility. I mean, it's all out there. And here we are again, bringing this back one more time. And it's the voices, the number of constituents that contact me about this, the business owners, is not changed. Everybody is very surprised that this is back again. And it's like saying that the voices of District 17, 13,000 voices don't matter. And that this is just, you're just going to do what you want to do on this. I just highly recommend that this committee recognizes that this is not the right move. If we want to move so quickly, in which we do, on getting the permanent shelter built, we have a number of locations that we've been looking at that has honestly taken quite some time. Why is it taking so long? Why is this location and even Bertillon location been so easily and quickly moved forward on? It's not the right location. Again, go back and look at all of the hours and hours of discussion we've had around this and the continuing discussion we have around this. You've got individuals that were previously homeless that have talked on this subject that said this is not where they want to be. They prefer to be closer to downtown where services and connections have been made. They also, we have the leaders of the churches downtown saying the same thing, that this is not where a good location for where we should be hosting a permanent shelter or a temporary shelter. And honestly, the public market, you know, there's a question as to, are we having the funding? Is the funding all going to come through to push that? Do we need to do this right now? Do we need to displace everybody from the First Street, which honestly has been the most successful location that we've had in the 15 years that they've been running that, because of its location and the size and the funding that we've had. So I really want you to just ask yourselves if this is the right move at this time. Thank you.
Thank you, Alder. Alder Carter?
Thank you. My question is similar to the Stoughton Road one. If we purchase this, what are our options for use if we decide on a different location?
So Alder, the resolution would authorize it for use as a temporary shelter and then as a long-term site for redevelopment.
Does I see that it, thank you, Mayor, for pointing that out, because now I'm just seeing that. Is there The timeline that Jim just gave us, is that included in the resolution for temporary shelter at Zaya Road, considering the outcry against this location? I think Jim gave us a year, could have been 2023. I can't remember.
So Alder, I don't believe the timeline is codified in the resolution. I'm not sure we would want to, given the number of unknowns in this process, but nonetheless, that the timeline that Jim gave is the best information that we have at this point.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Alder. President Abbas, I think either questions or discussion, fair game.
Sure. All right. Let's have one question for Attorney Haas and then discussion.
All right, Attorney Haas, go ahead, Alder.
All right. Attorney Haas, this resolution says about temporarily use. If city decide in future to use this facility as permanent use, my question to you is, as written resolution, is it binding? Are we only allowed to use as temporarily?
Well, I think the council in the future could pass a new resolution to change its use. Under this resolution, those are the intended uses, but that doesn't bind the council forever or a future council to those uses if it wants to change the use.
Okay, thank you very much. That's it for question for you. Just a very quick comment about this Zaya Road. We heard from Matt Wachter. We are a couple of weeks away from acquisition and the work they are doing on a permanent shelter. I'm very appreciative of that. I'm sure all council members are extremely, they appreciate the work staff did. And they also bring A, B, C, D sites along with other options in the finance committee. And one of the location which I publicly proposed in my own district, I believe that quite a bit of work has been done and we have quite a bit of clarity where we are stand with that side. Or at least I have clarity, but staff could still have to bring this to finance committee or to the council. But there are several other sites I do believe we are extremely close. I just having a really hard time to understand why we have to put a temporary shelter right now while we are 2 weeks or 3 weeks away from bringing something permanent. And then perhaps both can come together to bring some sort of predictability and some sort of predictability or for the community at large could be a better direction. So I will not support that the site as it is until I will see a permanent site, because I do have a fear this site might end up, regardless the resolution says it's temporarily. My concerns around transportation and other concerns remain the same with that site, which that was the reason I voted against at the first place. And I will speak more in detail on the council floor, but very long story short, I that's what I just want to say on finance. So I will not support this site. Thanks.
Thank you, Alder. Is there further discussion? Seeing no further discussion, anticipate that there is not unanimous consent. Is there objection to recording a vote in favor except for President Abbas?
I will be voting no also.
All right, let's just go ahead and do a roll call then. All those in favor, aye, as your name is called, and those opposed, no. And I'll ask Dave to call the roll.
Council President Abbas,
No.
Alder Carter,
No.
Alder Brevier,
Aye.
Alder Furman,
Aye.
Alder Figueroa Cole,
Aye.
Alder Curry,
Yes.
Mayor, the vote is 4-2.
With 4 ayes, the motion passes. And that brings us to item 20. I'll just point out to the Finance Committee that we have members of the development team here registered as available to answer questions. And I know that staff are here as well and can give a presentation. I'd like to try and do this without having to go into closed session unless there's a strong desire on the committee's part to go into closed session, but I will ask the attorneys to flag for us when we are getting close to things that might take us into closed session, please, just in case. And so let's start with if there are questions for any of the folks that are here registered available to answer questions, which include Nate Gundrum, JP Beitler, and Connie Thompson, and Thomas Hickey. I believe you all have the registrant's report. Are there questions for the development team? Not seeing any. So then would you like staff to do a little bit of a presentation, or should we just go directly to questions?
Presentation, please.
All right. So I will turn to, I'm not sure if it's one of the Matts. Let's go with Mikolajewski.
Good evening, everyone. I'm going to share my screen here. All right, is the PowerPoint showing here? All right. Good evening, everyone. For those watching at home, I'm Matt Mikolajewski, the Economic Development Director for the city. And I'll try to keep it brief, but providing an update as to where we're at with Block 105 and what you're being asked to do this evening. First of all, just by overview, Block 105 is half the Judge Doyle Square project. Block 88 is the block that is home to our new Wilson Street garage and Stonehouse Development's Novo apartments. And Block 105 is the block where the formal Government East parking structure stood along Pinckney Street between Doty and Wilson. And here's a map view that just shows, again, what we'll be talking about today is half of Block 105, the area that's directly adjacent to Pinckney Street, directly across the street from the new Wilson Street garage and apartment building. And here's another view showing the location of the proposed hotel, again, right along Pinckney Street. By way of background, the city currently has a development agreement executed with Beitler Real Estate as the master developer to develop a hotel at this location, such that the hotel financing must close by the end of this year. Again, we're only talking about half of Block 105. Beitler Development would retain development rights for the remaining half of Block 105 through December of 2022, with likely an apartment building proposed for that site, although we don't have a specific proposal in front of us right now. Beitler Real Estate has been working with Mortensen Development to develop an Embassy Suites hotel as the hotel project on Block 105. And this evening, and then at the Common Council on October 5th, you're being asked to support a series of agreements that would move this transaction forward. Again, the private development partners are Beitler Real Estate as the master developer for the entirety of Block 105, Mortensen Developer as the builder and owner of the Embassy Suites Hotel on half of Block 105, and then there will be a future to be determined hotel operator that would need to be approved by Hilton Worldwide. That would be the long-term operator of the hotel. There's been a city team working on this effort that includes many individuals that you work with on a daily basis. And should note in particular that Connie Thompson with Monona Terrace has been working with us on this, Sabrina Tully with the Parking Utility, and Ellie Westman Chen with Destination Madison. Again, there's going to be 5 items requiring Common Council approval, and I will talk about each of these briefly next. The first is an amendment to the development agreement that was originally executed with Beitler Real Estate in 2016. And what we will be doing through this amendment is assigning the development rights for the hotel project from Beitler Real Estate to Mortensen Development. We'll also be shifting from a lease of Block 105 for the project to a sale, which I'll talk a little bit about further, and also changing some terms of the parking agreement. We will also be signaling that we are comfortable with Hilton Worldwide selecting the operator for the Embassy Suites Hotel. And we're also going to be adjusting some restrictions that were placed on the Block 88 apartment project relative to the use of Airbnb by those building tenants. So I'll begin with the purchase agreement. The proposal before you would sell the property to Mortensen Development for a little over $4 million. And this is consistent with a city appraisal for the site. That purchase price may be reduced slightly based on some of the environmental remediation work that's required on the property. There's nothing significant in terms of environmental remediation needed, but there is some, and we will likely negotiate an accommodation for some of that work. This is beneficial in that it will provide then about $4 million of funding available to the parking utility to reimburse some of their costs that they incurred for the construction of the Wilson Street garage. And the purchase agreement outlines that the Embassy Suites will have a franchise agreement for a minimum of 20 years, which provides some assurance that there will be a hotel here for at least the next couple of decades. The second agreement that's going to require approval is the parking lease. And right now, there is no automobile parking proposed for Block 105 to support the hotel. So the hotel is being built without any parking adjacent or under it. And that's being done so that we can take advantage of the Wilson Street garage that was just constructed. And the proposed parking lease terms would provide up to 100 unassigned parking spaces initially. But over time, we could increase this amount or decrease this amount based on usage. And I should stress that these are unassigned spaces. These will not be spaces that are signed as hotel spaces or in any way differentiated from the spaces throughout that parking structure. A minimum of 40 of those spaces at all times will be allowed to be located within the new Wilson Street garage. But the spaces above 40, so up to 100 or up to 200, the parking utility will retain the option to locate those spaces in other parking utility facilities at peak times if it's beneficial to the parking utility to do so. The rate that will be charged is the monthly 24/7 rate for spaces at the time that the cost is incurred. And currently that's at $270 per month per stall, but that'll likely be increased over time as the Transportation Commission adjusts the parking rates. And the initial parking year lease term would be for 40 years with 2 10-year renewals. The benefit of this approach to the hotel is that the hotel can adjust the number of parking spaces that it requires per its usage and per its usage over time, which might change. And the benefit to the parking utility is this provides a source of revenue, but also gives the parking utility some flexibility in adjusting where those spaces are located, whether they're in the Wilson Street garage or one of their other facilities. Providing flexibility to both the hotel and the parking utility in the years ahead. The third agreement that requires approval is the room block agreement. And this agreement will help facilitate bookings of Monona Terrace. By way of recollection, one of the 2 primary goals of the Judge Doyle Square project was to have additional hotel rooms to serve Monona Terrace to increase the amount of business at Monona Terrace. And this agreement would do that. For bookings greater than 24 months in advance, there would be a block of 185 rooms. For bookings between 18 to 24 months, the block would be 150 rooms. Currently, Monona Terrace has a 150 room block at the Hilton. So this would effectively double the room block for Monona Terrace, providing significantly more rooms for event planners as they look to this facility. The rates will be set by the hotel owner, but there are limitations as to their ability to go outside of market norms. And the room block agreement will be in place for 20 years to match the license agreement that Embassy Suites will have for the property. Finally, there's a temporary construction easement that will allow Mortenson Development to use the remainder of Block 105 as a staging area for construction of the hotel. As I mentioned, what we're talking about this afternoon only focuses on half of Block 105. The remainder of Block 105 will be retained by Beitler Real Estate through December of 2022 to come forward with likely an apartment project. Again, we don't have a specific project before us now, but that's most likely what would happen over the next year. So there are significant opportunity costs for not proceeding with this project. The first is expanded business for Monona Terrace, as I talked about earlier. There's also various tax revenue, parking utility revenue associated with the project. Mortenson Development has done some analysis on this, and over a 40-year period, it could be up to $300 million of total tax revenue. There's employment, both construction employment and employment with the hotel. And there's also city staff time that has been spent on the Judge Doyle Square project. We're at a point now where, relatively speaking, very few hours of staff time are needed to secure, again, what was one of the primary goals of the Judge Doyle Square project. And if we had to pivot to another RFP process or another negotiation, we'd lose some of that effort, and it would take our time away from working on other things. So we're very close to finalizing this transaction, and we think this is a very good transaction to move forward with. And Nate Gundrum of Mortenson Development is available if the Finance Committee is interested in learning a little bit more about the hotel itself. But it is a hotel that meets the needs that we outlined within the RFP. And again, it will provide significant economic benefits to the community. So with that, I'll open it up for questions. And again, Nate Gundrum is available if you'd like a presentation on the hotel itself.
Thank you, Matt. Looks like Alder Furman has questions.
Thank you, Mayor. This may be a question for Nate, but it may be a question that staff can help answer. Are we aware of whether or not financing has been secured for the hotel? And if not, is there a deadline for this new owner to secure financing?
I believe I can take a start at it. I believe financing has been secured because under the terms of the current development agreement, they would have to demonstrate that financing by the end of this year in order to continue to move forward with the project.
So the new partner in this is still required to meet that requirement of securing finance by the end of the year. Otherwise, it ends this agreement. Is that what I'm hearing?
Yes, Mortenson, as the hotel owner and builder, will be the entity that is securing the financing, and they, in order to for Beitler to satisfy the development agreement that we have with Beitler, they need to move forward with this transaction with Mortenson so that they can retain the ability of the project to move forward. And Kevin Ramakrishna is here as well. So if I misspoke on that, Kevin, please feel free to correct me.
Oh, that's correct. They're assigning the development agreement, and it is not being amended to take away those timelines.
Okay. I'm glad to hear that. And then, are there any sort of guarantees that I guess we assume once they get financing, that's a guarantee that they're going forward with a hotel. I mean, there are obviously other project points that we have to make sure happen in order for the project to be developed. But I guess I'll get a little bit further with my point is, my concern is selling the property and finding out that we're not getting a hotel. Is there anything that protects us from that?
Well, I don't think they can really. I don't know what else they're going to build. You're going to have a land use approval for a certain development. You're going to have the financing set up for a hotel. They're required to have 20-year agreement with the Embassy Suites. So I mean that if they're closing at the end of the year like they have to, it's going to be a hotel.
Because all those other things will be in place, making it nearly impossible for it not to be a hotel.
Yep.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Alder. Are there other questions for staff on this? All right. Then believe we need a motion. President Abbas?
Move motion to adopt.
Second to adopt.
It's moved and seconded to adopt. Are there further questions or is there discussion? Alder Verveer?
Thank you, Mayor. I just want to take a moment to acknowledge that this is a significant milestone that is many years in the making. This is really the closest that we've come in a very long time to realizing one of the main goals of the Judge Dole Square project going back well over a decade, and that is to provide a more robust room block agreement for Monona Terrace to ensure its long-term success. So I hope that tonight my colleagues can unanimously support this deal. You already obviously heard Matt's arguments for the opportunity cost of not proceeding. I'll mention on the near term that there are approximately 400 construction jobs that are estimated to be created over the next 2 years, which is the estimated length of the construction phase is about 2 years. Mortensen will act as a general contractor, and they are signatory to the local building trades agreements. So these will be approximately 400 good paying union construction jobs in the short term. And then long-term benefits, as Matt explained, are really endless. I also want to mention that both the Monona Terrace Board, as it relates specifically to the room block agreement, and the Transportation Commission, as it relates to the parking lease, both recommended approval of this resolution unanimously at their respective meetings over the last couple of weeks. So I really hope that this is the light at the end of the tunnel that we've been searching for all these many years. And again, would urge your unanimous support this evening. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Alder. Is there further discussion? Seeing none, it's been moved and seconded to adopt. Is there any objection to recording a unanimous vote in favor of adoption? Seeing no objection, we'll record a unanimous vote in favor of item 20, and we'll move on to item 21. I just want to check with staff. Do we have Alexander Wilburn?
There's no one by that name in the attendees panel.
All right, thank you. So then we don't have any public comment. So I believe that the proper order of business here is to get a motion on the budget as a whole, and then we'll move to amendments and we'll take questions and discussion on each amendment separately. So Alder Boss, if we can get a motion on the overall executive capital budget.
Yep, move motion to
adopt.
Yes, to adopt.
Second to adopt.
All right, moved and seconded. And that will take us then to amendments. We'll start with item 1. And I'll draw your attention to an email that came from Christine with an alternate. And so President, actually what I'll turn to the lead Alder. So Alder Figueroa Cole, do you wish to make a motion on amendment number 1?
Motion to amend.
If you wish to move the alternate, Alder.
Sure. So motion to move the alternate to the amendment of the project 63060.
And President Boss?
Second.
All right, so moved and seconded to adopt the alternate of Amendment 1. Are there questions for staff on the alternate Amendment 1? Is there discussion? Is there any objection to recording unanimous vote in favor of the alternate Amendment 1? Seeing no objection, that alternate Amendment 1 is adopted. And that will take us to Amendment 2. Alder Verveer?
Thank you. Move adoption.
Is there a second? President Abbas will second. Are there questions for staff? Is there discussion?
Mayor, I'll just very briefly state that this is, I think, a very straightforward, self-explanatory amendment that was a result of a question asked during the capital budget hearings of engineering staff. So we're simply taking advantage of the recently created new tax incremental finance District 48 in the Regent Street area.
Thank you, Alder. Is there further discussion? Seeing none, is there any objection to recording a unanimous vote in favor of Amendment 2? Seeing no objection, Amendment 2 is adopted. Takes us to Amendment 3. Alder Furman?
Move adoption of amendment number 3.
Is there a second?
Second.
Moved and seconded. Are there questions for staff? Is there discussion? Alder Furman?
Thank you, Mayor. I'd like to just briefly speak to this amendment. As we heard in the capital budget presentations at Finance, the scoping exercise for the Rindall Imagination Center / library is still not done. So it is unclear what the size of the library is, who the different partners will be that will possibly help operate it, and ultimately the cost. Obviously, Finance has given us an annual impact, a rough estimate of that. But I just think from a good governance standpoint that we should have an understanding of how this particular project to be operated will be funded before we go ahead and approve spending of $1.1 million on engineering schematics, and then obviously be asked next year to approve the actual construction of the building. And so I'm simply just asking for library to come forward with an operating plan to explain here's how big the building is going to be, here's the actual scope and exercise that I know has been going on for a very long time. And so then we can make the decision on going forward with a fairly expensive engineering process and obviously building the library with a clear understanding of what the budget impact would be. That plan would just require a simple majority vote of the council, and hopefully we get that early next year, and the project can move forward at least knowing all the information. Thank you.
Thank you, Alder. Alder Halverson?
Sorry, I couldn't get to my hand. Thank you, Madam Mayor. I did have a question for staff. I wanted to ask Director Mickles some question.
Go ahead.
Director Mickles, can you explain what the impact would be of this amendment to what the Imagination Center plan currently is at? Can you just explain what this impact would be?
Well, the impact's somewhat unclear to me. As Alder Furman alluded to, actually we have completed a scoping study. What we're actually working on is pre-design right now. And these factors have always been shared with Finance Committee, Common Council, in this budget year and previous years. I think the pre-design, as I've shared before, will better inform what the final look of the project will look like as far as dimensions. This initial proposal operating budget was submitted in 2018, and that was on the basis of a 20,000 square foot library. 20,000 square foot park shelter. Just preliminary pre-design work, it's very evident that these facilities won't be that large to meet the needs needed to be that large to meet the needs of the community that it's serving. We definitely did demonstrate in our strategic planning throughout 4 years of study, including the scoping study, the need for this facility. I trust the judgment of the Common Council of supporting this project.
And just to follow up then on that, so you would say this is currently in pre-design, and you're working through the process that would help us develop the proper operating cost understanding. And that is going to be different than what was originally proposed in 2018. The size will be reduced. Is that correct?
That's correct. Through the pre-design work currently being conducted, possible modifications from that initial proposal would take into consideration utilizing a smaller staff model. Additionally, there was no factoring in 2018 of the impact of co-location of other city agencies, which we have identified so far as parks and city IT, or community organizations, which we haven't clearly identified yet, how that may impact the operating budget. There was no design information in 2018 to inform how the design and program of the space would be tailored to community needs, and that's all being applied right now. So all of these conditions are being considered in the pre-design work currently moving forward. Specifically, we're looking at ways of what will be the impact to operating budget in the pre-design work currently being conducted.
Thank you very much. And when would you expect the pre-design to be completed and we would have a better idea of these operating costs?
Well, that's a process that's being shepherded by Public Works, but I anticipate that we should know relatively soon. They have limited resources right now to complete the design work, so we're moving forward as rapidly as we can.
Thank you, Director Nichols. And then just two more questions. How long have we been working on the Imagination Center at Rindell Park?
As long as my tenure, and that's been 9 years. Detailed strategic look at the project began in 2014.
Okay, thank you. And then final question. Can you explain or just share a little bit about why this site is so important to the northeast side, east side of Madison for a library?
Well, in the scoping study, really in the strategic plan, clearly illustrates how underserved this area of the city is for library services or city services. And the intention was clearly identified as a need, particularly when we look at the only elementary school in the entire city that is what we consider a library desert. This is also part of the city where school children need to travel considerably. You've got high school students that travel outside the service area. You have middle school students that travel outside of the service area. When they return home after school, they're not afforded the same resources that other students are across the city with our various locations. So, there's a variety of factors. There's also, and you could really speak to this, Alder Haverson, is the need for a community space for the community to come together and just to be able to meet and have those types of resources available for civic engagement and for neighborhood associations, etc. So the need's been definitely documented.
Thank you, Director Nichols. I don't have any further questions, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Are there other questions or is there discussion? Alder Harrington McKinney.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. This is for discussion. Is that appropriate at this time?
Yep, go ahead.
Okay, thank you. In the vote for the Judge Doll Square, the staff mentioned the opportunity costs. And when you look at the outreach and the community engagement and the looking at Rindle Park and the Imagination Center since 2014, there was not a light in an interest. I mean, it was a very robust conversation and engagement from all types of people in that community. And to put this on the question or the sidelines after a major investment in time, effort, commitment, tenacity, just seems like something that we don't want to do. I served on the library board, and the idea of the library board was something that really energized that committee. And so I would ask for reconsideration that we move this project along. There has been major investment in that. Rindle Park has been before us in so many negative ways, but to have that park and to not have a source for young people and members of the community to access the library. And it is an excellent partnership with the library and also having a space on the east side that can accommodate all of the things that that the director talked about. And so I implore you not to stop this, to allow this to go forward. There'll be ample opportunity when these figures come out to take a look at this, but to slow down the process at this time is just not good. Thank you.
You, Alder Figueroa Cole.
Yeah, I may be misunderstanding what the intent here is, but I didn't think he was asking for the project to be stopped. I mean, I think a library is needed. We're just asking, I think the ask was to have a plan, to show a plan in place. I mean, I do sit at the Board of Parks Committee, and we have also discussed this project and that relationship between the library and the parks and how everything functions in there. Still, from my view, up on the air. I don't know if someone from staff from the parks is here that wants to have a voice on these discussion. But even maybe they can clarify with someone from parks. I mean, do we have a plan in place already that brings that synergy between parks and the library needs?
You, Alder, we have Christopher Peguero here. We're not hearing you for some reason, Christopher.
We can hear you. No.
Looks like you're unmuted on our end. There you go.
There you are.
Yeah.
No, I can't hear you. 1 second. Apologize.
How about now? Can you hear us?
Sorry.
Christopher, if you go to the bottom left-hand corner of your screen, you'll see a little caret. It's an up arrow next to the word mute.
I can hear you.
I don't know why I explained this to him. He can't hear me.
Yes, we can hear you, Christopher.
Great. Thank you. Sorry about that. To answer your question, Alder, yes, the scoping study was kind of a blueprint for what the Imagination Center could be in regards to a connection point between two departments, so parks and library. I think right now we're in the process of doing a great deal of community engagement to again understand the potential of what the new Imagination Center could bring to the community that has felt it needs investment with community space. Again, what Director Mickles had stated with a place for youth to gather before and after school, but other community investments as well. Things that we've talked about in that plan and what could potentially come out of the Imagination Center is a connection point between different departments, almost like a neighborhood center that could provide many other opportunities for community in that area to connect to community services. So I think the history that we are all well aware of within Randall Park currently, an investment within the park and between libraries to bring a different story to our future, I think is an important one, but we're trying to gather that information now with a plan, but right now we're early in applying the scoping study into the design of the building itself and what the potential programming might look like, both inside the building and how it's integrated throughout the park system. Does that answer your question, Alder?
Yeah, I mean, so at some point that plan will come out. So I don't think the intent here is to slow down the process. It's just making sure that the plan is ready and out before the money is spent or whatever. So just wanted to hear from Parks because I know that this is a collaboration between Parks and the library. It's not just the library, and there's a lot of unknowns. So thank you for the input.
Thank you.
Thank you, Alder. Alder Carter?
Yeah, let me understand this. This is putting the Imagination Center back on the horizon list. Is that correct, Mayor?
No, that's not correct, Alder. It is simply adding making the expenditure of the budgeted funds in 2022 contingent on library and presumably with Parks input and possibly from other departments, submitting an operating cost plan and the council approving that plan. So all of the funds for the Imagination Center would remain in the capital budget. There's no change to any of that. There's no financial impact. It's just making sure that the departments would submit an operating cost plan, and that plan would have to be approved before the funds that are budgeted in 22 could be spent.
Are released.
Correct.
Thank you. Thank you for that clarification. Is Greg still with us? I don't see him.
Yep, he's still here.
Oh, there you are. Greg, can you tell me when you built Penny Library back in the day? It seems so long ago. Did you submit a operating budget when you built Penny? Or an operation plan?
We did have fiscal notes related to operating, but it was to be fair to doing the comparison. That was a relocation of an existing library, so there was an established operating budget to work with. So the fiscal implications were completely different.
Okay, when you build, I think it's Ashman Library, that was a brand new library. Was there an operating plan for that?
That was before my time, Alder. I don't know that. I would assume perhaps Mayor Satio was on the council. I don't.
I'm trying to remember. You can be almost guaranteed that Alder Revere was.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. Okay, I think I will leave it at that. I can't top that statement. Thank you.
Thank you, Alder Carter. Alder Halverson.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just a point of clarity on your statement. So we're going to require the plans to be submitted before the expenditures. What happens if those plans are not submitted, and what time would those plans need to be submitted by?
Well, Alder, I'm just reading the amendment like everybody else. The language says expenditure of the 2022 project budget is contingent on the submission of an operating cost plan and council approval of that plan.
So is there somebody give some legal opinion on that then?
Alder, if you have a question for Attorney Haas, feel free to ask it.
So Attorney Haas, can
Yes.
you extrapolate from this amendment what happens, or if the plans aren't there, or is there a time frame? Can we extrapolate that from this?
Well, based on the language, it has to be submitted and approved. So if the council does not approve a plan or it does not get submitted, then the funds can't be spent.
And that would be submitted and approved next year, 2022?
Well, this is the budget for next year. So if it's not submitted by the end of the year, then the funds would not be spent. It would be a matter then to decide what happens in the following year.
So it's contingent on the plans being submitted this year,
For this budget.
for this budget. Okay, thank you. That clears it up.
Thank you, Alder. President Abbas?
Yeah, thank you very much, Madam Mayor. This couple of years ago, I don't remember last year, not perhaps year before last year, the council approved this Rindle Imagination Center. And I also at that point spoke about the benefits the community have. I don't need to spoke more about it because at length we heard today what benefits it have for East Side. And also that particular side benefit for kids, it have huge benefits for immigrant community. And there's quite a bit of immigrant and refugees community live close to that area. This is similar situation, just like a public market. It's a 9-year, this project is in design and built in 9 years. Scoping has been done, design has been done, council approved it. I know operating budget is gonna be a difficult task in any big projects, how we going to move forward. But it's extremely important for us not to bring it back to the council and create more doubts about the project and how it's going to move forward. We should all collaborate, and I do think so it will be a mistake for us to keep, as we heard, the design is done, this is moving forward. We should keep it move forward the way it is, rather than, creating more doubts and bringing it back. That's pretty much similar like, any big project. So I will not support this particular amendment.
Thank you, Alder. I just want us to all be abundantly clear that the design is not, in fact, done yet.
Yes.
the scoping is done.
Scoping is that's in design process. Yes. Correct. Thank you for correction. Yes.
Is there any further discussion? All right, seeing no further discussion on, Alder Carter?
Can I would like to do a friendly amendment, even though there's no such thing.
Alder Carter, feel free to make an amendment.
Instead of having the operating budget come back to us, I would like to add that the operating budget must be in place before the funding are released.
I'm sorry, Alder, let me try and understand your intent here so we could maybe get the correct language. Is your intent that the operating cost plan would be submitted to staff?
Would be submitted to staff.
To finance staff?
Preferably.
It's library staff that will be coming up with it, probably in conjunction with finance staff.
Right. And that it would be that it would be submitted before funds are released.
All right, so you're proposing to change the language of the amendment to read expenditure of the 2022 project budget is contingent on the submission of an operating cost plan to finance staff? To the finance department?
Yes, because the board staff is going to be drafting it, am I correct? Even though they'll draft it with finance?
Presumably.
Yeah.
I'm looking sideways
so ultimately,
at Dave Schmidtke to see if he wants this.
Could we have that say a report submitted to the finance director by the library director, something to that effect, so it's clear who the lines of responsibility are? If that's your intent.
Submission of an operating
your intent here.
By the All right, so Alder Carter, let's try this and then we'll see if we can get a second on it. Is it your intent to say submission of an operating cost plan by the library director to the finance director? Right, is there a second for that amendment? Again, the language is operating cost plan submission of an operating cost plan by the library director to the finance director. Is there a second?
Second.
Alder Abbas will second. All right, so now we're on Alder Carter's amendment. Alder Carter, did you want to speak to it?
Yes. You know, what my intentions are is to ensure that this project continues forward, even though we are adding the caveat of having an operating cost. It doesn't need to necessarily come back to us if our intentions is ensuring that the library submits an operating cost. And when I say come back to us, I mean the Common Council.
Thank you, Alder. Alder Furman?
Thank you, Mayor. I appreciate Alder Carter recognizing the need for that report. I won't support this change. I don't know why as a council we would give up the power to look at that and approve it. I am uncomfortable approving an expense and not knowing what the ramifications of approving an expense is, hence this resolution. Our amendment that I proposed, I think this negates the intent for the council to understand and be okay with the cost. Since I have the floor for a moment, we'll just say, I'm not against this library. I'm not against this project. I've seen, in my years on the council now, the need for this. But I do find it incredibly important for us to understand how much it's going to cost, know that that's figured out and whether or not we can pay for it. I think it's a mistake for the council to give up its power and ability in this discussion. So I will not be supporting this change. Thank you.
Thank you, Alder. Is there further discussion on the amendment? All right, not seeing any. I'm going to go direct to a roll call vote on Alder Carter's amendment, just so everybody's clear what we're voting on. We are currently voting on whether or not to change the language in Amendment 3 to read contingent on the submission of an operating cost plan by the library director to the finance director. All those in favor of that language change, aye. Those opposed, no, as your name is called, and I'll ask Dave to call the roll.
Council President Abbas?
Aye.
Alder Carter?
Aye.
Alder Verveer?
No.
Alder Furman?
No.
Alder Figueroa Cole?
No.
Alder Curry?
No.
Mayor, the amendment fails on a vote of 4 noes to 2 ayes.
All right, so we're back to Alder Furman's original language, which has been moved and seconded. We're going to move directly into a vote then. All those in favor of Amendment 3 as originally submitted, aye. Those opposed, no. As your name is called, then I'll ask Dave to call the roll again.
Council President Abbas?
No.
Alder Carter?
No.
Alder Verveer,
Aye.
Alder Furman,
Aye.
Alder Figueroa Cole,
Aye.
Alder Curry,
Aye.
Mayor, the amendment's adopted, 4 ayes to 2 noes.
Thank you. All right, so that takes us to amendment number 4. President Abbas,
Move motion to adopt.
is there a second?
Second to adopt.
Moved and seconded. Are there questions for staff on amendment number 4? Is there discussion on amendment number 4? Alder Figueroa Cole.
Sorry, I got lost here for a second. So 4 is?
4 is the Country Grove Park restroom facilities.
Yes, thank you.
The new project.
Okay, thanks. So again, like I mentioned earlier, I do sit at the Parks Committee or the and there is the, we often discussing the topic of resources and how, still through a pandemic, we are having all these other priorities with the housing insecurities. So I really want to hear staff's input in regards to the actual feasibility of this project to be done on these 2 upcoming calendar years, and if perhaps there's an option to move this into the horizon list for a future endeavor. So if someone from staff could please clarify if this project, based on our current staff and resources limitations, is something that we should be taking up as a priority on the upcoming budget.
Thank you, Alder. Eric Knapp is here.
Good evening.
Madam Mayor, can I talk to the project before the staff?
Alder, no, it's questions for staff at this point, and then we'll have discussion after.
Okay, thank you.
Eric?
Good evening. I'm now worried that I'm going to have tech issues. Can you hear me okay? Okay, good. So the question about the first thing I would say is that the amendment, in my reading of it, allocates funding in 22 and 23, but does anticipate a project that's really crossing 3 years of time in the text, and certainly from a staffing perspective, I think that's an important note. With our current staffing level today, and even anticipated a little, we have a vacancy in our planning development section. We talked about that at the last finance committee. We briefed on the budget. We're hopeful we'll be filling that position in the not too distant future, and some other key positions that overall help us move forward. But this project, certainly, I don't think it's feasible to think it will be fully constructed in 2023, if that's the question. As laid out in this amendment, we would seek to start. Our work plan in 2022 is very heavy. We have some very big projects. If things went well, and if this amendment passed, and if things were going well, this starting towards the very end of the year, some level of work, I don't think we're going to be in a position to have the full design development process with a consultant-driven level. Right, that probably would be not completed at the end of 2022. Is my read. But the funding here in total is certainly sufficient. We're confident that the funding is sufficient to get the project done. But I do not think it would be completed in 2023 at this juncture. That said, if you enter it into a contract for constructing, even at the very end of 23, you would need that funding. Our standard is to have the funding allocated to enter into the construction contract. So I don't know if that was the question. As far as prioritization, as you're all alders. You're elected to represent the diverse and significant 20 districts with significant different needs and wants and desires, and there are plenty of those in our park system. I will say certainly this project has a lot of merit in and of itself. But I would also qualify that we spent a lot of time over the last decade trying to get Door Creek on the far east side. That was in a similar set of circumstances with a large population, developed neighborhoods, significant use of athletics and other events, and not having a restroom or shelter facility. It's taken us about a decade to get there. We're almost ready to build there. There's some areas of our community that were built in the 90s specifically, where the community park, this is a community-sized park, didn't receive the amenities that we often consider normal community-sized parks. And I think that's a part of the story here. Now, how do we prioritize rectifying that if we wish to? And how do we fund it and the ongoing support of it? Those are all the tough questions. And certainly, I don't want to, I would say it's a bit of a mistake for us not to contemplate this on our own horizon list or even late SIP 26, 27. It probably rises to that level. That's a mistake on staff submitting. But where it fits in the priorities earlier than that, there's just a lot on the table, and we think we could achieve mostly along the lines of this amendment. The timing, it would be a real challenge. I hope that addresses your question.
Thank you. That's all I have for now. Thanks. Let me come back.
Thank you, Alder. Alder Wahilahe, we're still in questions for staff. Did you wish to speak?
Yes, Madam. Thank you, Eric. I want to take this moment to thank the staff and the staff of the finance department for really, helping me with this amendment. Country Grove is top parks in utilizing the athletic field reservation. With its recent expansion and growth in nearby residents, we'll expect overall usage to grow up. The area continues to be an area of population growth. Country Grove is one of the least parks that doesn't have public restroom. Historically, and Eric can attest to this, it's number 3 in soccer reservation, mostly youth behind Randall and Brick, both in which have restroom facilities in the park. Notably, Elva Park and Gunner are also second and third busiest parks as it relates to shelter reservation already. So extra pressure from growing population on the west-southwest side is leaving demand unmet. Mostly, the west side outside the line we only have is District 1, which is Elva Park. There are more than 2,000 shelter reservations across the system annually, and 21 in 21 locations. None are in District 7. The need the park staff, and this is overdue to have park with public District 7. I hope my colleagues will support this unanimously and with your support. This is a need versus a want.
Thank you, Alder. President Abbas?
Yeah, just the acknowledgement was very hard to hear all the way here. There was a lot of distraction. I have one quick question for Dave Chemitsky. One quick question is, for process standpoint, let's say we approve this capital, because it's capital budget, we approved it. Let's say staff didn't get a chance, or staff time, or whatever the reasons, they're not able to do the planning process in 2022 and planning start in 2023. So my understanding is the capital budget, if you don't use it, move to next year's, correct?
With each budget, Council President Abbas, any unspent appropriations are put into a report and attached to the budget and are approved as part of adopting the budget resolution. So yes, you're correct. Unless there's a subsequent action to make a change, those appropriations are rolled over to the subsequent budget.
Okay, thank you very much. I appreciate that. I have no further question. I have just a comment, but I see Alder Wahilahe hand is raised.
Thank you, President Abbas. Alder Wahilahe? Was your hand still up, or did you wish to speak again?
Okay. Just one thing I want to add is the Country Grove Park serves District 10, District 20, District 1 and District 7. Adjacent to that Country Grove Park is Chavez Elementary School, which is very diverse. And you can imagine, just imagine having 3 soccer reservation with no bathroom and the kids are playing soccer. I want you just to imagine that. And what we are asking is to start the project in 2023 with the hope to complete in 2024. We are not taking any funding from any other resources. This is capital budget. And we hope that people understand that this is a priority. When kids are playing soccer and they have to hold I want to mentally imagine that. Thank you.
Thank you, Alder. President Abbas?
Thank you very much. I will encourage my colleagues to approve this budget amendment. I acknowledge the workload and the pressure the park department have. There's quite a bit of project happening on the north side in District 12, also on 18th. I'm so very well aware, and also the work they are doing in other part of the city as well. And also short capacity. I also acknowledge that too. However, also I acknowledge what Alder Vihili is saying, keeping really equity as a center and the lens of our policy making, and this area definitely deserve city attention regarding creating those facilities rooms, much needed facility rooms. If park department, the reason I asked that question from the finance director was to just make sure everybody understand, if let's say park department doesn't have a capacity and they move to the next year, at least there's a budget allocated, which express council full commitment for this particular project, regardless if it get delayed 1 year or 2 years. Removing this budget from here is basically not really supporting this project. That is my definition. So I will really encourage to support this project. Thanks.
Thank you, President Abbas. Alder Figueroa Cole?
Yes, I mean, I don't disagree with President Abbas' comments, but again, I just sitting on the Parks Committee and listening to the stress that we are putting on them right now with everything that is happening in the city, with the priorities that we currently have. Again, the reason I raised the issue is to just make sure that people are clear about the expectations. Just because we put it down or because we accept it or because we pass it doesn't mean that there's going to be a bathroom at the end of the year there. I mean, there is, I just want to make sure that expectations are clear across the board, not just the council, but the constituents and the people that use the park. That was really the intent, to just put something on allocating money for something that we know is going to be a long shot. I just, it doesn't sit well with me. So just making the expectations clear. And thank you, Pars, for your input.
Thank you, Alder. Is there any further discussion on amendment number 4? Seeing none, is there objection to recording a unanimous vote in favor of amendment number 4? Alder Figueroa Cole, I think your hand is still up. You're not objecting? Okay. Seeing no objection, amendment number 4 is adopted. All right. That takes us to amendment number 5. President Abbas?
Move motion to adopt.
Is there a second?
Second to adopt.
It's moved and seconded to adopt. Are there questions for staff? This is the amendment on Eller Park improvements, specifically updating the Horizon list project. Seeing no questions. Oh, Alder Harrington McKinney.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I see that the Parks Director, Eric Knepp, is on the call, and also Christopher is on the call. Could you speak to why this amendment came forward, please?
Eric?
Certainly. So there's been last year the council adopted and included on the horizon list a project for a potential community center at Elver Park. The Parks Division working with facilities management engineering. To be clear, we did very little of the work. They did more of the work. Did some initial scoping and costing of that potential based pretty squarely around the current size and scope of the Warner Park Rec Center, as an example. That costing was developed, including a total estimated design, development, furnishing, all in at $16 million. It didn't clearly appear in the horizon list, and that's on us and Parks, I think, for not being clear about that cost estimate as part of the budget process. That led to some, I think, consternation and concern about what the cost was and where it fits. This project will help highlight more clearly when the master plan elements, the master plan revisiting of Elver will be coming in 23-24. That's important as we do hope to see Elver Park grow in size over the coming years. We've been hoping for a while, but I'm more hopeful than I was 5 years ago. And that master plan would really tease out a lot more about the horizon list work to estimate a cost profile to see is that even really what's desired or what's needed. I know there's also significant interest in the community. Now, how many dollars, I don't know, but significant interest in people interested in trying to find a way to start moving private resources towards this approach, including thinking about ways to secure additional grant resources from multiple sources. That's the history of how Warner was built. That was mostly federal, not private, but there's some history there. So that's some good things, I think. And I think this amendment really, Alder McKinney and Alder Boris have brought this forward. I think it really helps the narrative along. We probably were a little sloppy on our narrative, and certainly the horizon list, by not having that 16.1 square centered on the table, led to some confusion. That's how I see it, Alder. Harrington McKinney, if I didn't answer your question, please direct me as appropriate.
Yes, you did. And the reason that I asked Christopher to come back on, because a lot of some of the things that you expressed in terms of the need to have a center over at Randall really duplicates the need of having a Warner Park-like facility over at Elver. Could you speak to that, or have you had any experience at Elver that you can speak to?
I'll do my best. My kids are in the background getting ready for dinner. I apologize. I think absolutely you're correct, and the need again for a facility that meets the needs of youth in the park. I have not spent a lot of time in regards to this project and learning a lot from Eric. So I don't want to pass the buck here, but I do believe that one thing that we're looking at is the importance of investment within, especially our communities that are very diverse and racially diverse and ethnically diverse, and looking at Elver as a feature of that investment, I think from a parks perspective is very important. Again, from the need, from the social equity perspective, but also looking again at what you bring up so that we're looking at Ryandahl. And I'll just stop there and let Eric jump in. Thank you.
And I think it's a really, Christopher's spot on. I would just say and echo what I maybe didn't say extremely clearly with when my first answer. A big part of this though is like really thinking about what is our model. And this is for us all, and what promises are we making and what expectations are we setting, and what's our pathway to get there. Warner is an amazing facility. We're going to expand that facility, and it serves a lot of people, especially I think over the last 5-7 years, we've done better than we had before about getting to youth, our focus, right? And we're still very open and accessible to our senior residents as well. So you can do both. I think we're showing that's possible. But the reality for the entire council, for the finance committee, this is what I hear every neighborhood plan or area plan, right? Every time I spend time out in the community, these are the demands that people want to see. as you see with these price tags, they get very scary. And operationally, when I see the price tags, I feel pretty good because we operate Warner at about 700,000 in total spend, maybe 400 of levy, but it's still not nothing, right? And how do we get there? And are we making? I think a big part of this master plan at Elver and Alder McKinney and others have led other community members who are interested is how do we chart a course that allows something great to happen that the city can actually partner in at a level that we can sustain, right, and commit to, because I just want to make sure everyone understands. I hear this. This is very common. This is maybe the most common question I get of big scale of how do we get a community center on the south side, on the east side, on the west side, right, on the near north side. It's a big deal, and they work, but we have one that's not been our model, and a model shift is certainly a thing. The Library and Imagination Center at Rindle is a way to maybe do that a little differently, right, from a parks operational cost. But these are challenges we're going to face, and I think our community is going to continue to ask us what we're going to do to address it. Sorry if I went way off the rails there, but it felt like the right space to say what I think is very true.
Thank you very much. And my comment is just a follow-up. Alder Bars and I have really been talking about and to our communities to say this is a major investment, and the city is not going to carry the bulk of it. We've been having conversations with other key investors within the district who want to get on board. But this was important. When I read the description in the budget report, I knew that there was just too much, that clarity was not there. So if you read the amendment, you'll see that the clarity has been, we worked on it, it will be replaced. We really understand the commitments from the Parks Department, and Alder Figueroa Cole was absolutely correct in terms of what is doable in terms of the staff. The staff has been very clear in terms of what they can do, what this model looks like, where it can be appropriately fit. All those conversations are ongoing. And what our ask is that we continue to say, as we are out in the community making these asks in terms of, financial support, to say that we are moving forward and to keep this on the alive and active on the horizon list. We are coming back. I mean, this is a project that will not materialize in 2 years, 3 years. We get that. We understand that. But absolutely, in order to start building those blended dollars, it's important for us to make sure that it's solidly on the horizon list and that we can move forward with it. And so I will ask the colleagues on the Finance Committee to allow that to happen and to move this amendment forward. Thank you, Mayor. I'm complete.
Thank you, Alder. Is there further discussion on amendment number 5? Not seeing any further discussion, then is there any objection to recording a unanimous vote in favor of amendment number 5? Seeing no objection, we'll record a unanimous vote on amendment 5. Takes us to amendment number 6, also in Parks, which is an amendment to the Lake Monona waterfront improvements. Alder Revere?
Thank you, Mayor. I move adoption.
Is there a second?
Second.
Moved and seconded. Are there questions for staff on amendment number 6? Or is there discussion?
If I could just mention, Mayor, that this is something that I did mention during our budget hearings that I would likely move forward with an amendment on. It's simply because of the the potential expansion of Law Park and the greater Lake Monona waterfront area there is of great interest to many stakeholders. And I felt that the executive budget presentation for this project gave the impression that no work was being done currently or proposed for the next year. So simply acknowledges the work that city park staff is planning to do in the budget year moving forward. Obviously not changing any of the amounts in the SIP in the out years. Thank you.
Thank you, Alder Rivera. Is there any further discussion? Seeing no further discussion, is there any objection to recording a unanimous vote in favor of amendment number 6? Seeing no objection, amendment 6 is adopted. That takes us to amendment number 7, which regards the new North District station for the police department. Alder Abbas.
Motion to adopt.
Is there a second?
Second to adopt.
Moved and seconded to adopt. Are there questions for staff on amendment number 7? Seeing, Alder Figueroa Cole.
Just curious as to why it was removed from the horizon list.
This one has been back and forth, Alder, in both what the project was and it's certainly AC Patterson can speak to the MPD's continuing desire to have it not just on the horizon list. But this one has been proposed in, I think, multiple iterations and has been back and forth. Did you have a question about the project or for Assistant Chief Patterson?
Oh, I mean, nothing. I was just wondering if there was a specific reason why it got pulled out before. That was it. But I don't know. I mean, I don't, yeah, if you, Chief Patterson, if you want to speak on this one, I really appreciate it. I know we had our own side conversations, but I think it would be good to share with everyone else.
I think the last time there were questions around the existing site folder and whether or not we should take a closer look at that particular parcel to see if it could accommodate an addition or a remodel of some sort to allow for expansion. Engineering did do a comprehensive review comparing that particular site to the idea of procuring a new one. And their recommendation was to move away from the existing site and to find a new property to build upon.
Thank you.
Any other questions for staff? Any discussion? Alder Abbas.
Thank you very much, Madam Mayor. This amendment is proposed by Alder Mayatsi. I will speak to it, and perhaps he will also would like to speak onto his amendment. As a Northside Alder, I support this particular amendment. Just putting in a horizon list, the existing facility is at capacity, and also from engineering standpoint, the facility cannot go upward, and there's not enough land to go outward. And with the expansion of City of Madison, we already saw in the census 16% increase in Madison population, and also a lot of population growth is increasing towards East Washington, towards District 12, as well as towards Oscar Mayer and Northside. There is the fire station is, and if memory serves me right, in 2019, the priority list, it was third in priority list for MPD and 8th or 9th in priority list for fire department. So both need at some stage, some point in time, they need new facility to expand their work, and perhaps that facility could use for other purposes as well. So it's important for us to keep that in mind and keep in a horizon list, and we could go from there. Thanks.
Thank you, Alder Miadze.
Hello, everybody. And the reason why I decided to put it on the horizon list, I went there myself to had an appointment with the chief there, and the parking lot, just even looking at the parking lot, it's overflowing. I mean, the cars are down the street. Also, they're using the daycare right next to it. So it is definitely outused. It's a service I know that was built in the 90s, and given the population, of course, is growing and growing. So it's definitely time to get it back on the horizon list and really look for a different facility. I know I spoke to a few officers where the interview rooms are now turned into offices, so it's well over capacity. So that's the reason why I wanted to put it back on the horizon list. Thank you.
Thank you, Alder. Is there any additional discussion on amendment number 7? Seeing none, is there any objection to recording a unanimous vote in favor of amendment number 7? Alder Furman?
Mayor, I just would like to be recorded as no. I don't know if anybody else wants a vote, but I just want to be recorded as no. Thank you.
Is there any objection to recording a vote in favor with Alder Furman being recorded as voting no? Seeing no objection, I'll ask Dave to record that vote. And that brings us to amendment number 8 regarding a new property and evidence facility for the police department. Alder Carter.
Move adoption of amendment number 8.
Is there a second?
Second.
Moved and seconded. Are there questions for staff? Alder Miazzi, I think your hand is still up from the previous discussion. Thank you. Are there questions for staff on amendment number 8? I have a question for staff. I think for Matt Wachter, but certainly either of the chiefs could weigh in. My recollection is that we have discussed, I'm just counting off the top of my head, somewhere between 3 and 5 different solutions for property and evidence facility, some of which might be standalone, some of which might be combined with other city facilities. Is that correct? And can you speak to our decision-making process around that?
So a number of years ago, the long-range facilities team did look at a combined facility. I believe engineering priced out to see what we'd get from combining, say, the North Station with evidence storage and some of those things. And I don't think we came up with a lot of savings. I know we've also done test fits at a couple of different sites. As things stand today, our police evidence is scattered. Some of the sites are owned, some of them are leased. So I think where we sit from a search site is, I think we're all in agreement that in the long term, it makes sense to combine sites, but we don't have a lot of direction as to exactly where that could go as of today. So I don't believe real estate is actively searching for a site. But like I said, we've done a number of scenarios and test fits to know what doesn't work. But we've also, I think, learned what could work going forward.
Right. And so I guess the question is, are we ready to say that we're moving forward with a standalone facility given the other options that we've looked at?
I think what we're saying is we don't necessarily gain a lot by co-locating, but if the right site came about, we could certainly co-locate it. But like I said, it doesn't necessarily gain us a lot of efficiencies. I know Brian Cooper is also on this call, and I believe he did some of those, some studies. But my take is we could certainly move ahead with a standalone facility if I think that would make as much sense as, probably more sense than trying to find the perfect site to co-locate.
Thank you. Any other questions for staff? Is there any discussion? Oh, Alder Figueroa Cole.
Sorry, I confused now. So I guess I thought we were, so seems like, are we talking about the same thing that we just voted on? Put it on a horizon list or whatever? I mean, I am trying to.
No, Alder, The amendment is to add a new project that would start in 2023.
Okay, so the first one was the new North District Station.
And this would be a standalone, brand new property and evidence facility that would start work on the project in 2023.
Okay. Already, sorry, I missed that. I missed that one. I didn't study that one. Moving on. Thank you.
Thank you, Alder. And we have 3 police staff here ready to speak to it if you'd like them to give you a little bit of an overview. Right.
Yeah, so I mean, I guess I am really trying to wrap my head around this one. So this is just to put it on the list for the upcoming, for the 2023 budget, not the 2022 budget.
Yes, Alder, it would include it in the SIP in 23, 24, and 25 with some very significant numbers.
Yeah, I see that. Okay. And was this in a Horizon list before? Is this something brand new, or is this moving from somewhere else into the line?
Chief or Assistant Chief? Or Teague? I don't know who wants to take that one.
I can jump in, Chief. Alder, this has actually been discussed since as early as 2008. Engineering helped us with a study back then. And actually made this recommendation, and it has made an appearance on past SIPs. I think 2013 was the first year, and the last time it was on the SIP was 2016. And then the most recent appearance has been on the Horizon list. So this has been discussed more or less for the last 13 years. But just to kind of summarize what Matt mentioned, we've got 4 different main locations where our property is currently stored. And almost on every side of town, there's 1 east of the square, 1 west of the square, and then 2 downtown. And it does create a lot of inefficiencies when someone needs to come and get a piece of property. But it also has been raising some security concerns, some fidelity concerns when it comes to the storing of property and evidence, because all 4 of the locations that we're currently inhabiting are near capacity. And so, it's starting to raise our concern even more so with the attachment of the town, and there's going to be property and evidence that we take from them that we're going to kind of further strain what we have as far as storage space goes.
And when it comes to, I think I heard Matt saying something about we own some buildings, we rent other buildings or lease other buildings or whatever. Sorry. So the intent here is to reconcile all those relationships into one place. Is there a cost saving analysis done on how much will this save us by moving into one building?
So the report that I referenced back in 2008 actually recommended a consolidated standalone facility. It didn't really point to a location, but it said a central location would be ideal. Been trying to kind of examine opportunities that are near bus lines or close to the downtown area that really address, I think, the accessibility concerns that we currently have with the 4 separated, decentralized locations. But we've been working with engineering over the years to really come up with these figures that you see in front of you tonight. And this really does expand the existing space that we have now. This is roughly a 60,000 square foot standalone facility. And I think right now, I'll send you an email if I'm wrong on this figure, we're between 25 and 30,000 square feet. So it almost double what we have now.
Thank you.
Thank you. Are there other questions for staff? Alder Verveer.
Thank you, Mayor. Back to the issue of co-location for a moment here. I recall a discussion about co-locating with the parking enforcement function, perhaps on Pennsylvania Avenue, I thought. Is that accurate? Is that still a possibility, or is that no longer the case? I'm looking at Matt, obviously, do it.
Right. So when we've looked at Pennsylvania Avenue, it's a variety of buildings that sort of come as a package, and we were looking at the variety of uses that could be served, just given that the buildings are in good shape and we have a variety of needs. So you could call that co-location, but it's really they're just sort of on the same street, not in the same facility, if that makes sense.
I see. So we are not working toward trying to find a new home for centralized parking enforcement under the Department of Transportation in conjunction with this in any way.
Right. So I guess when looking at Pennsylvania Avenue, it's looking at buying half a dozen buildings and relocating various services into there. And it's just that site in particular might make sense to have them be next door to each other. It's not that we're looking for a building that would have evidence storage and that use in the same building, if that's so they're related, but it's a kind of separate conversations.
I get it. Thank you, Matt. Thank you, Mayor.
Alder Carter.
I'll go last, Mayor.
All right, Alder Heck.
Thank you, Mayor. This is a question for Dave Schmidtke. This particular project has one of the larger price tags associated with it later in the SIP. And I wondered if you had been able to update the debt service percentages of the general fund based on if all the amendments tonight were approved and actually enacted by council. Do you know if 2025 has, I think, 18 million or something in this portion of the SIP for this particular item? Can you give a ballpark estimate even about what our debt service percentage would be if this was approved?
I have not made that update. I think just based on if 18 million is actually issued and spent in 2025, I assume just given the trajectory of projects, it probably wouldn't happen until 2026 at the earliest. But that being said, the debt service on something like that is probably going to be, again, depending on how we borrow for it, between $1 million and $2 million. And so as a share of the overall budget, it's going to be roughly, 0.1%. So it's not going to make a significant change in the debt service percentage.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Alder. Alder Figueroa Cole.
So when it comes to the funding, are there any other revenue sources that can be used for this project?
Generally for projects such as fire stations, police department, which are really general in nature and don't have revenue streams, that is primarily going to be general obligation borrowing repaid by the property tax.
And I guess that this is the same answer. You may have the same answer as when asked before. So putting this into making this project line, it is contingent to having the funds or to a new vote. Like $80 million is like a lot. I can put that in. I cannot imagine 2 years from now having to work on this budget process that we just working on right now with already $80 million on the whole on this particular project. So what kind of adjustments are we can we make? Is it something that can be the timeline can be extended, or any recommendations on that regard?
So this is going into what's called the capital improvement plan. It is not in the capital budget for 2022. So it is a plan, has not been appropriated. And so the council will again take a look at this budget in 2023 and 2024 and 2025. The first time that funding is, at least in the SIP under this amendment, would be 2023, meaning you will see it again as a council in the 2023 capital budget, and we'll decide again if you are actually going to appropriate that money for this project.
Thank you.
Thank you, Alder. Okay, I think now, Alder Carter.
Thank you. I'd like to encourage my colleagues to approve this amendment. Our property facility currently is in 5 different locations. It's imperative as we grow and as we attach other communities to the city of Madison that we have one central location for our property facility. I would hope that you would approve this amendment. Thank you.
Thank you, Alder. Is there further discussion on amendment number 8? Alder Verveer.
Thank you, Mayor. I would just say, personally speaking, that I would be much more comfortable if the approach of this amendment followed the previous amendment that we just adopted relating to the North Police District, that is placing this item back on the so-called Horizon list. I think we all are aware that the police department simply requested that this project be placed on the Horizon list in their official capital budget request this summer. So I don't know if Alderperson Carter wishes to respond to my suggestion, but again, I don't know that I could support the amendment in its current form, but would be much more comfortable if again, this was further amended to place the project back on the Horizon list, which is what the police department again requested in their official budget request, and the approach that was just taken by President Abbas and Alder Mayase in the last amendment. Thank you.
Thank you, Alder. Alder Figueroa Cole.
I echo Alder Verveer's suggestion.
Alder Carter.
Yes, thank you. The unfortunate thing about the Horizon list is that it can stay on there for 20 years. There's no urgency when it's on the Horizon list for it to come off the Horizon list. As the council members change over the years, the Horizon list becomes more faded. If this is why I put it in 2023 for the council to re-examine this during the 2023 budget and also in 2024 and 2025. I would prefer that it would stay on so it can be more accessible for us to look at than for it to be put on the Horizon list. We've had 3 things that have been discussed tonight that have been on the Horizon list since early 2000. So I do encourage you to approve this amendment. Thank you.
Thank you, Alder Carter. Just a small fact check there. The Horizon list didn't exist until the 2019 budget, but that doesn't mean that the projects hadn't been under consideration previously.
Well, thank you for that.
Are there further questions or discussion? Right. Seeing none, is there objection to recording unanimous vote in favor of Alder Furman?
Mayor, I'd like a roll call vote.
All right, we'll do a roll call vote on amendment number 8. So all those in favor of adopting amendment number 8, aye. Those opposed, no. As your name is called, then I'll ask Dave to call the roll.
Council President Abbas.
Aye.
Alder Carter.
Aye.
Alder Verveer,
No.
Alder Furman,
No.
Alder Figueroa Cole,
No.
Alder Curry.
No.
Mayor, the amendment fails on a vote of 2 ayes to 4 noes.
So that brings us to the end of our amendment list. So we're now back to the question of the capital budget as amended. And Dave, before we vote on that, why don't you just remind us of the process from here on out?
So this will be referred, I think, to the next council meeting for a public hearing, and then the capital budget and the operating budget in the first week of November will be open for amendments by the full council, and then those amendments will be considered at the budget meetings of the council on the second week of November.
Thank you, Dave. All right, so then on the executive 2022 executive capital budget and SIP as amended by the Finance Committee tonight, are there questions or discussion? Is there any objection to recording a unanimous vote in favor? Seeing no objection, we'll record a unanimous vote in favor of item 21. That brings us to the end of our agenda. I'd entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Is there a second?
Second.
Moved and seconded to adjourn. Is there any objection to recording a unanimous vote in favor of adjournment? Seeing no objection, we are adjourned. Thank you all. Have a good night.